the foundation because I don't know where everybody is exactly. But why do we need to study science and the Bible? Aren't they contradictory? Doesn't science prove the Bible false? And doesn't the Bible is silent on science? You know, after all, the Bible is a religious book. So why don't we just stick with religion and forget, leave out because the Bible is a religious book. So let's stick with religion and leave science up to the experts. Well, hopefully we'll see what's wrong with that as we go through. It was amazing. I read a recent survey. In fact, I tried to find it today to make sure I had the numbers, and I couldn't find it, but I found some very similar. There are something like 71% of Americans do not believe the Bible is absolute truth. They think that the Bible is open to interpretation. You know, the Bible is, as I said, a religious book. But when it comes to absolute truth, black and white truth, 71% of Americans do not believe the Bible is absolute. Thank you, Casey. You're a gentleman after my own heart. But now I can't see the doors. So I always like to look at the door to make sure if anybody's coming in. I like to have plenty of time to duck and leave you guys to deal with them. I think all of us would agree that if you have any doubts, I don't recommend this very often, certainly not for more than a day or two, but turn your local channels on or turn on Fox News or whichever, and just watch it for one day. Watch the news. I think it starts at 5. I don't watch it then, but from 5 o'clock till 11 o'clock that night, watch nothing but news. And if you still have a brain left at the end of the day, write down how many crimes were mentioned in just one day. Now, if you do Fox News, you'll get national news. Local news, you'll get a shooting here, a shooting there. National news, I read today, where was it? Colorado, they had 3 people shot today. And, it's constant, nonstop. People are being shot, killed. Politicians are telling the truth occasionally. If you talk enough, you might get the truth. Well, not our current president, but, sin is rampant. I will deal with this on page 2, I think. But we see things going on today that were unheard of 30 years ago. Things that are going on today that it was never heard of 50 years ago, 60 years ago. I think we would agree that we are engaged in a spiritual war like we've never seen in any of our lifetimes. So what does science have to do with sin? What does science have to do with the rapid murders, rape, everything else that's going on? What does science fit in? How does science fit in with that? College students are losing religion rapidly. Several years ago, Mr. Ham out at Answers in Genesis hired a company, and I don't remember the company he hired, but he hired a company, very big, very well-known company, to do a national survey. And I think we can get you a copy of that if you want it. I guess you all still have it. She's thinking, not sure. We can find a copy. But it started out, and it dealt mainly with people that were raised in Christian homes. And they were raised in Christian homes, and the kids eventually departed got away pretty much from religion. So the survey they were asking a lot of questions, but in the end, what one thing could you say that was the primary cause of young people disregarding religion, and when did it begin to happen? Now, this was several years ago. If they did it today, I know the results would be different. But of college students, people who were raised in Christian homes, went to college, and I've got 41%. I don't know where I got that. It's much higher today. I must have got that from an older survey. But it's much higher. The vast majority of kids that go to college graduate with a negative attitude toward the Bible, church, established religion, and all of those things. Even among so-called Protestant colleges, the percentage is very high of students who raised in fundamental Bible-believing homes go to college, graduate, and the percentage is very high who no longer claim to even be born again, much less believe the Bible, much less have an established religion. What happened, and I say at college because I'm sure the survey today would be different, probably would lean more toward high school, but when the survey was taken, college seemed to be the turning point for the majority of students. Now, I'm sure without doubt, it would be high school, and as we'll see, even in elementary. People who were raised, taught the Bible, reject it. What happened? What happened to change their attitude? Now, we know, although, how many of you are familiar with the 1619 Project? A few, okay. 1619 Project, and I'm going to give you a very short, was written a few years ago, saying that our country was not established in 1774. Our country actually was established in 1619, and it was established primarily for slavery. You know, it's all part of the CRT, critical race theory. It's part of the Black Lives Matter. You know, it's part of the things that are going on, that America was not founded for freedom. It was founded for slavery, which, you know, if you read it, it's a lot more detailed than that. We know, if you study history, not every founder of our country was a Baptist. And one of the things I hear frequently is that, well, you know, Benjamin Franklin wasn't. He was a Unitarian, I think he was. You know, and they go through different ones were this, and not all of them were Christians. But even the ones that were not Christian still had a fundamental respect for the Bible. They still had a certain set of morals, and our country was founded on those morals. And that may be a good lesson. In thinking of history, one of the things I thought about, I don't know that I would want to be the one to teach it. I would probably try to find somebody that is a real history buff. But if you've ever read or studied The Trail of Blood, I'm sure you probably did with Brother Sadler. In fact, I almost know you did with Brother Sadler. But it is a book that traces the history of Christianity, and it shows how that our church was started under persecution in Acts, how it's been persecuted all down through history. But I think all of us would agree our country was founded on a Judeo-Christian foundation. In fact, even some of the men that were not Christian, you know, said that, you know, if God doesn't raise up our nation, it will not raise up. They talked about, that we were endowed with certain things from our Creator. We were founded on a Christian nation. But something happened along the way. It actually started in the 1800s by the way, we talk about Darwin, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin did not start evolution. He did not start it. He just simply wrote the book that spread it, expounded it, and made it where it is today. Something has happened. I remember, it's been a while ago. I think it was our kids, I think it was our kids, could have been grandkids, but I decided, they wanted to watch cartoons, so I sit down and we're going to watch cartoons together. Mickey Mouse. I remember Mickey Mouse when I was a kid. Mickey Mouse today ain't Mickey Mouse when I was a kid. Here comes the bunny rabbit. What was his name, the bunny rabbit? Who? Bugs Bunny. Yeah, Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny ain't what Bugs Bunny used to be. And it's like, wow. So my grandkids, we didn't have cable when our kids, but our grandkids, it's like they like to watch the Disney Channel. So it's like, I'll sit down and watch Disney with you. Disney is not what Disney was. Something has changed. I can't even think of it, but I'm sure if I could think of it, they got Big Bird and some of those other things. Sesame Street, boy, you know that, Dave. I'm amazed. The last time I saw an episode of Sesame Street was just before Big Bird or Cookie Monster, one of them, figured out he was gay. It was one of those characters. And it's like I never watched it after that. There even shows that used to be clean. So you can't watch Disney anymore. The History Channel. I'm not a history buff, but I know a lot of people are. Now the history, at least from what I hear and read, is more about how slaves were mistreated. And don't misunderstand. There were some slave owners, who mistreated their slaves, beat them, everything under the sun. But now in California, I read it today that Governor Newsom I'm pretty sure it was California. He appointed a committee to see about paying the black people today because their great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a slave. And the figure I heard, Don, you may have heard it, I heard something like $250,000, $500,000 per person, $5 million per person. That was higher than I heard. $5 million per black person because their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparent was a slave. I don't want to get into this. It's not my purpose. I could live on that. Wonder if I could get some shoe polish. Think that would help? Things have changed. History Channel now distorts history. It's not the history that I grew up learning. Public education, don't even go there. Don't even mention that. Hallmark, I mentioned some time back. My wife and I have had to quit watching Hallmark, which used to be one of the clean channels, because, and it's like, at first it was just a flukes. Then it got to be very regular. Homosexuals, men kissing men, and I don't mean on the cheek like they did in olden times. I mean on the lips, men kissing men, women kissing women. So you can't even watch Hallmark anymore without being exposed to all kinds of things. Now, I did get this as of today, or as of when I read it today. The average child, now this is average, across the nation, spends 19 hours and 24 minutes a week watching TV. Out of, well, yeah, no, I had it broken down. How much was TV and how much was these little screens they've got? But there were, and I can't believe I didn't write that down. I thought I wrote it down. 3 to 4 hours a week in church, and that's assuming Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, between 3 and 4 hours a week in church. They spend 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen, TV or iPad, iPod, those little game things they've got. And out of that 7.5, 4.5 hours a day are spent in front of a TV. With all the brainwashing going on, how much do you think that brainwashing affects kids? You think it has any effect on kids? They come to church. Most of them don't get the 3 to 4 hours a week in church. Most of them maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. And they hear, David and Goliath. David took a rock or stone. David took a slingshot, killed Goliath, and they're going, ah. And then they go home and watch TV where we got aliens from outer space. We got bang, 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 bang. And I don't know how they do it, but my fingers won't move that fast. They spend 4.5 hours a day in front of a TV watching evolutionary cartoons, billions and billions of years ago, watching all of this trash, watching all of this filth and this other stuff, and we wonder why they have a negative attitude on religion. I think it's pretty self-evident. Look at the rapid acceptance of sin. If a boy and girl, I know I'm telling my age, but I'm doing it to show you the difference. If a boy and girl had a physical relationship before they were married, they were ostracized. You just didn't do that. And if a girl had a baby before she was married, you kept it quiet, you kept it hidden, you didn't let anybody know because, she's, nowadays, and I used to have a habit whenever we would go out to eat or go anywhere, I would always ask, the server, just out of curiosity, are you married? Have any kids? Well, I can't do that anymore because, no, we're thinking about getting married. We've been living together for 10 years now, and we're thinking about getting married. And by the way, we have 3 kids. Talked to a lady today. I've known her for several years, and I used to preach at her every time I'd see her. I finally gave up. She's been living with this guy for 25 years, got several kids. And and I told her years ago when I first met her, I said, are you married? You got any kids? And I told her, I said, you do know that's sin. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Well, why don't you get married? You've been together for 20-something years. Why don't you get married? Well, at this point, it's just a waste of time. I had another gentleman that we used to buy a lot of equipment from. He's retired, maybe dead by now. I haven't heard from him in years. But, we were talking one day, and he was just talking away, and he said something. I said something about your wife, and he said, well, we're not married. It's like, I've known this guy for years and didn't know that. He said, yeah. He said, we started off, and it's a long story. We ended up living together, and then we had kids, and we didn't want our kids to know we weren't married, so we just pretended we were married, and our kids to this day don't know we're not legally married. And it's like, okay, he's older than I am. But nowadays, you go to a restaurant, go anywhere, and I would say, 60, 70, 80% of the time, yeah, we're living together. We're thinking about getting married. We haven't decided yet. Sex before marriage is now more common than virgins getting married. It's more common than I ever would have thought. Adultery, cheating on your spouse. It's only sin if you get caught. You know that, don't you? It's only sin if you get caught. Homosexuality, they would have tarred and feathered somebody in earlier years. They would have hung him up, mutilated him physically, and nowadays, I read, today's Wednesday, it must have been Monday, nationally right now, homosexuals for years and years and years and years was around 2% of the population. That means 2 people out of 100 would identify as gay. Now, when you include transgender, along with gay and everything, it's up to 7.2%. And a lot of that is transgender, but it's up to 7.2% now of people that identify as, I think gays by themselves are between 4 and 5%, and then the rest of it is transgender. What's all that got to do with Bible and the science? Well, number 3, how does the Bible and science enter into this world of war views? There are only 2 religions in the world. I know we just spent several weeks looking at denominations, but there are only 2 religions. Anybody want to guess what those 2 religions are? Well, okay. That's one way to quickly sum it up, true and false. Wasn't quite what I had in mind, but there's only 2 religions. You take all of the denominations, boil them down to their root core, and there's only 2 religions in the world. You almost got it, Don. Yeah, that wasn't the phrase I was looking for, but yeah, it's God's way or man's way. You know, salvation by grace is God's way. Every other religion on earth has got salvation by works as one part of it. Either the Bible is true or the Bible is false. You know, it can't be partially true, partially false. It's either totally true and everything should be filtered through the Bible, or the Bible is false and everything should be figured through man's experience and science. Paul warned young Timothy to beware of science falsely so-called. In fact, I think that was the verse. Oh, I didn't put a verse on this one. I really slipped up. Either the Bible, we start with the Bible and branch out from there, or we start with science and branch out from there. Whichever view you take is going to determine everything that you believe. It's called a world view. How do I view the world? Do I view the world through the Bible, or do I view the world through science? And that is going to make all the difference in the world. If people are taught the Bible is wrong, And to quote Ken Ham, the real emphasis on the Bible, anti-scripture, is Genesis 1 through 11. That seems to be where the biggest attacks are, is Genesis 1 through 11. That includes creation, that includes sin, that includes the curse, that includes God's commandment, that includes, the bulk of everything we believe starts in Genesis 1 through 11. Now, you're a young kid. You're gullible. Your mind is not fully developed yet. Your frontal cortex is not even hardly started being, developing. And you're told in school, I don't even know how long they're in school now. Minus lunch, about 7.5 hours a day, something like that. 7.5 hours a day, you're told the Bible is false. The Bible is false. The Bible is false. And then you go to Sunday school for about 30, 45 minutes, and we say, and nothing against teachers. I think any teacher that teaches Sunday school deserves a ribbon of some kind. But we go in there, and no matter how enthusiastic we present it, they've been told 5 days a week, 7.5 hours a day, the Bible is false, the Bible is false. And these people that tell them that have college degrees. Many of them, back when I drove a school bus, and I assume anybody work in the school system. Okay. Back then, and that was back in 91, no, that was in 92, 93, 94, and I drove in Tennessee from 90 to 91. So 5 years I drove a school bus, and the push back then was not only you have to have a bachelor's degree to teach, but they were pushing you have to get your master's degree to teach. So kids go to school. This person has a master's degree in college. And most Sunday school teachers, and I'm not saying negatively, but most Sunday school teachers, well, I won't say most, some Sunday school teachers don't even have a high school education. They were stuck teaching because nobody else wants the job. We got to have somebody. Just go in there and entertain them. I don't care. Read them, sing, dance, do magic. I don't care. Just do something to entertain them for 30 minutes. And then they go to school where this person has a master's degree. Who do you think is going to have more influence? And I'm not putting down Sunday school teachers at all. I had some wonderful Sunday school teachers. Unfortunately, for my sake, they all knew my dad and mom too well. And if I misbehaved, they would spank me and then go tell Dad, and I'd get another spanking. But can't do that today. But the point is, either the Bible is true on everything it covers, or science is true. And we have to filter everything through science. If the Bible is wrong in Genesis 1 to 11, the Bible, you can't believe Genesis 1 through 11, how do I know I can believe John 3:16? How do I know I can believe Romans 3:23? How do I know I can believe that there's a heaven and hell? If I can't believe the very beginning, how can I believe anything else in the Bible? So, and again, most of the attacks are Genesis 1 through 11, because that is the foundation upon which everything else is built. If the Bible is wrong on geometry, geology, how can I believe it on salvation? If I can't believe the Bible on anything else, how can I trust it for salvation? And time is up. Wow. Well, anyway, are we off to a good start? You want me to continue? Or you want to find something else that would be more interesting? And I know, and I was thinking about this because someone asked me, they love history. And it's like, I've got people that can't stand history, and I got people that love history. I've got people that love science. I got people that don't like science. I'm one of those that in 16 years of school, I never did like history, except in the 8th grade.